Israel was not created in order to disappear. Israel will endure and flourish. It is the child of hope and the home of the brave. It can neither be broken by adversity nor demoralized by success. It carries the shield of democracy and it honors the sword of freedom. John F. Kennedy. Peace, distant dream or achievable goal. You cannot overcome hatred with hatred. Net Kyung. This quote was stated by a young girl who met Anne Frank in a dreaded concentration camp while she was in her adolescent years. This quote symbolizes that even if you have thousands of reasons to be against someone, you cannot hate, or else you lose notion of fair judgment. Nonetheless, peace will not be achieved as Palestine continuously bombs Israel, and if Israel constantly cuts off Palestinian basic human needs. The complexity of the conflict in the Middle East between Israeli and Palestinians isn't merely about a never-ending hate for one another, but about how the Jewish people have been constantly attacked for over centuries. In 516 BCE, the Jews were exiled by the Babylonians, who also destroyed King Solomon's first temple. This Babylonian invasion was just the beginning of various attacks towards the Jews, being so that in the years 309 to 302 BCE, Jerusalem had the leading party changed 7 times. After many years of hardship and wars, the Jews were given land on May 14, 1948. Ever since then, there has been a great controversy wondering if Israel has a right to exist. The fact is, although Palestine has the right to have their own state, Israel has the right to remain where it is currently located with the citizens living in peace. After the rise of the Nazis and Hitler, 250,000 Jews were displaced without anywhere to go, and the creation of Israel helped them. To clarify, even though the Holocaust was a horrific event in history, it was an enormous incentive to create a Jewish state. Although the extremely powerful Zionist movement would have fought for the creation of Israel sooner or later, since thoughts of creating a state for the Jewish nation existed long before the war, the ferocious war was vital to create this state as soon as possible. To start off with, Jews couldn't return to many European countries after leaving the camps because of strong anti-Semitism movements, and many of their communities were destroyed. Many of those who did return lived in constant fear, and in worst cases were killed in pogroms. A pogrom was an organized massacre, especially of the Jews, therefore meaning Jews weren't safe to go back to their original country. To make matters worse, pogroms weren't very rare, being that the largest was in 1946, in which 42 Jews were killed in Kiesel, Poland. This implies that even if the Holocaust survivors wanted to return to their homelands, there was a very slim chance that they would live like before. Plus, it also demonstrated that Israel was fundamental for the war escapees to go, because without it, many more deaths would have occurred. Therefore, meaning Israel saved many Jews' lives, even though it isn't shown as a direct saving. All in all, the Holocaust was a horrendous moment in history for the Jews. Yet in the end, it was one of the largest incentives, if not the largest, to create a homeland for the Jewish nation. Secondly, the Jewish people irrefutably deserved the land they have because they tried to find safe manners of settling things, yet when they did fight with violence, they fought fairly. To begin, Israel had absolutely no fault for the United States' partition plan for Palestine to not work out, and any statement that says otherwise is completely chimerical. It was clearly stated that the plan was created to help Arabs and Jews by creating economic union between the proposed states, as well as protection of religious and minority rights. Since the plan was in utmost interest of peace between these two nations, the Jewish people and the Jewish Agency agreed, despite the perceivable limitations of the offer. On the other hand, the Arab governments declined the plan of the partition in the resolution, and it was clearly indicated in the reluctance of the Arabs to accept any project involving territorial division. As a consequence, in 1948, the Civil War, also known as the War of Independence, broke out, leading to Israel gaining 78% of the land being fought for. To make matters worse for the Arabs, the highly helpful and deliberated partition plan was not implemented. What this can show us is that Israel was striving to achieve peace, while the Arab nation was fighting the fact that a common goal between the two nations might have been in the near future. This shows us that Israel is a state that attempts to find peace for the citizens, that they are given obstacles to deal with that prevent them from doing so. In other words, Israel has all the right to exist, because they are always looking out for the best in their inhabitants, and when they are forced to act violently, they do it in a manner that is fair for their citizens. Another example is that the UN later on announced that the Arabs were the one who triggered the violence. This violence later on led to 700,000 Palestinian Arabs fleeing from their homelands or being expelled, making them refugees. As stated before, the Israelis did nothing to make this war happen and have many people displaced from their homes. Indeed, Israel fought the War of Independence because a safer route to go was turned down by the Arabs, making it transparent that the Israelis won their land in a clean and equal manner. The Jewish nation has had ties with their promised land for over 3,700 years, therefore making the existence of the state all the more valid. In Genesis 15:18, God declares to Abraham, "Your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." This quote states that God hands over the land to Abraham, meaning that ever since the biblical times, Israel has belonged to the Jews. It also shows that Israel was considered the place that was going to be the Jewish homeland, which proves that the Palestinians never had the right to be the land occupiers. This point validates that Israel should exist because it deplores the fact that the Palestinians were the owners of the land, making the existence of Israel valid. Additionally, the prestigious Arab-American historian, Princeton University Professor Philip Hitt once said, "There is no such thing as Palestine in history. Absolutely not." This quote proves that the Jewish people never invaded anyone's land when they created Israel, therefore making it completely valid. To deliberate further on that, in February 1919, when the First Congress of Muslim Christian Associations met to discuss who would be the Palestinian representative in the Paris Conference, it was clearly shown by the Palestinians that they are considered part of Arab Syria and that they have never been separated from that. It was also stated that the Palestinians were connected to Arab Syria in the means of national, religious, linguistic, natural, economic, and geographical bonds. This proves that the Palestinians were considered part of Arab Syria, even by themselves, which shows that Israel has the complete right to exist, because the Palestinians were already part of Syria. As it can be seen, Israel absolutely has the right to exist, because not only was it promised by God, yet it was the Jewish nation's land ever since the beginning. As educated scholars, we must consider the opposing reasons. Many argue that Israel has completely no right to exist, saying things such as the UN resolution in 1948 is invalid. Some support this by saying that Palestine didn't have a voice in UN at that time, therefore making the resolution unfair. Yet, as stated before, Palestine clearly stated that they were always a part of Arab Syria, much before this resolution was sent out. Palestine obviously considered themselves at home in Syria, as it is shown when they say that they have religion and natural bonds with the Arab Syrians. When stated that the UN resolution is invalid, there is a complete and utter disregard for all the things that Palestine has said about not being part of Israel and denying a contract for a territorial divide, therefore making Israel valid, because the Jewish nation hasn't said anything about being in a previous territory before occupying Israel, as the Palestine said with Arab Syria, meaning that the Jews have always waited for Israel to exist to become part of a state. In conclusion, Israel has by all means the right to be considered a state in the UN and towards the rest of the world. A country that fought for its right in a fair manner and which tried to choose a safe way of resolving problems is a state that will set an example for the rest of the world. Israelis continue to receive bombings from Palestine and continues to have its citizens living in fear, and Palestinians still complain about the resolution in 1948 not being fair. Yet in this bloodbath of accusation, there is no one who proposes something to propel this situation toward a common goal. Israel has consistently treated their situations peacefully, and they have always tried to resolve their issues. Yet there isn't a side in this situation that is currently striving towards peace. Peace will not be achieved if something doesn't change. History proves that it took over 3,700 years for Israel to finally get their safe haven. Yet it only took a matter of 2 years to break that down. Peace isn't given, it is earned and achieved. And if neither the Palestinians nor the Israelis act quickly about achieving this goal, it will remain as a distant dream.